Hello. Believe me, we really need to do something about rape offences and other sex offences in the UK. I'm now 71 years old, and 50 years ago, I myself was a victim of a sexual offence, aged only 21. But believe me, having watched that wonderful drama, believe me, to be honest with you, I found it very upsetting. Um, but if you haven't watched it, I highly recommend watching the drama, believe me, which was incredibly well acted and a very well written drama that put over the true story of War Boys, this taxi driver who, it's come to light, has committed over 105 sex offences against various women. And huge question marks come out of this, thanks to the tenaciousness of the victims portrayed in this wonderful drama. And my heart goes out to them because they weren't believed by the police, basically. And it would appear that the police were trying to cut down on their work, perhaps, and they didn't even do things properly and didn't even record some of these crimes as sex offences. And it wasn't until later that one actual officer noticed a pattern developing. But it's come to light that War Boys probably even started before he was a taxi driver years ago. Back in the 80s, he was some sort of male stripper, and it would appear that he had been offending back then as well. And I think as a society, we need to have a real fresh look at this sort of thing. And we need to have proper thought about this and a discussion about how we grow up in the UK and how we need strong deterrence to stop this sort of offence. And we need to have much better systems to give support and nurture to victims, and better police systems. I remember them talking years ago, the police, who were going to bring in better systems and more female officers helping and more support for the victims. But the statistics are diabolical, actually, about sex offending and how many convictions actually go through. And the whole criminal justice system is in crisis as well. And I think this is part of the problem, in that the courts are working incredibly slowly. I think the police lost their way and they were playing numbers games and manoeuvring and not recording crimes as crimes just to improve their statistics or their clear-up rate. And I think, this is really, really inappropriate and very upsetting. And now we have these young offenders who've been given community rehabilitation for offences that are clearly disgusting and are filmed against young victims, and incredibly upsetting. For me, what is crying out is we need a national discussion on consent. And when we're growing up, as a priority, all our children need to know about appropriate relationships and the law of consent. And this needs to be, number one, how we need to behave towards each other before any academic stuff. And I think, again, many schools have been focusing a lot on Ofsted inspections and various statistical things. And I think a number of children have been cast aside and excluded when they shouldn't have been. This has been coming to light. And I think part of the decision about the young offenders is that the reality has arisen that if you send somebody to youth custody, they're at much higher risk of reoffending when they come out. Similarly, adult offenders, if you send them to jail for short periods, they're much more likely. But we need to change the emphasis of custodial sentences in this country completely. And we need to not only focus on punishment, but the punishment is us being protected from these people and then being isolated from society, that in itself. But there needs to be much more focus upon addressing offending behaviour in prisons and young offender places, in rehabilitating them and finding ways of stopping them reoffending. That needs to be a priority within our custody. But of course, it's run in sort of Victorian lines. Our prisons are overcrowded, they're under-resourced, and there needs to be much more emphasis upon rehabilitating young offenders on probation, early doors, rather than allowing them to escalate. And I think part of the problem here is, I've said this in other videos, is that public servants, within the probation service, within teaching, within prisons, have been very poorly managed by the authorities. They haven't consulted with these staff on how things could be done better, and they've imposed all sorts of radical changes. And I talk about the probation service, that a number of changes have been imposed by politicians over the years that have been most unwelcoming and highly damaging to the probation service, resulting in many good staff leaving. So I think it's time really that we start consulting from the grassroots of society. How can we address these awful offending? And let's have an adult conversation about it. And how can we stop people reoffending? So how can we stop people offending in the first place? And how can we stop them? But this, believe me, I'm really deeply upset by the and I feel for the victims, having been a victim myself, and I think we need to have not just sweep it under the carpet and be frightened of discussing about this issue in the UK, but let's be radical. Let's, number one, talk about positive relationships in schools and the law of consent. I personally feel that any online porn should be banned completely in the UK, and it should be just blocked somehow. We need to find a way of blocking it. And I know that's going against the World Wide Web sort of idea, but I think one of the negatives of the World Wide Web is that internet porn is easily available, and I think it should be just blocked. We need to find ways of blocking it, because I think it's highly unhealthy, and we need to learn to stop objectifying people, and we need to talk about people in other ways as real people, not objects. Anyway, that's it. And do have a look around my other videos. There's a police officer who's been convicted of a rape, and he's due to be sentenced shortly. So look out for that. So that's the next big case. Again, very worrying. And do have a look at my video on that. Anyway, all the very best now. Bye-bye.